Welcome, Khokhoi. And I just want to thank you for offering your time to do this and making yourself available because I was really excited to do it. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to frame your origin story, so to speak. But so did you grow up in Florida or where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida.
Uh-huh.
I migrated there when I was 6 years old. It's coming up actually. It's in like 3 days, like my
Your anniversary?
anniversary
Uh-huh.
of arriving. Yeah.
Okay, so you arrived here from the Philippines?
I arrived here from Cebu, Philippines, wearing a Pocahontas t-shirt. And like, I'm going to her lands.
Wow.
Just like a few months before I turned 6. My parents are from a small island outside of Cebu, which is sort of like urban capital in that region.
Okay, so wait a minute. I want to go back to this Pocahontas t-shirt. So do you remember the event of coming over or?
Well, there are pictures. And no, because I'm going to pull them up in a few days. It's like anniversary.
Yeah.
But yeah, we actually took a boat from Cebu. It was like an overnight 24 hours to Manila. And so, yeah, that was like, I was wearing my repping Pocahontas all that journey there as the photo show. And then when we left on June 30th, 1996, yeah, I was in Cebu with all of our family. That was the last time I'd ever see like my grandpa. That was.
Did he pass away before you got to see him again?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Sorry.
Yeah.
Was y'all close?
So we used to write letters when I was a child, and that's also. God. I mean, it's because we would do like letters on Veterans Day, like write a letter, like in elementary school, in South Florida, and then he'd write back, and he's like, "We have these letters." He's like, "I'm a veteran of the American Army. I served in the Philippines." When Obama passed that bill for veterans who had fought in the Philippines through the American Army, they received some lump sum. My grandpa had it was just before he died. I hadn't seen him since that day that we left, but he was always in my memories. And I mean, it comes up because the first time I would ever go back to the Philippines as an adult, like I was 21 years old. That would be 15 years. What is that? 21 minus 6.
21 minus 6 is 15.
15 years. Yeah. 15 years before I'd ever go back to the Philippines. And I was trying to go back because my Lola my grandpa was dying. And my flight was like mid-May 2011. Right. And he passed away March, the end of March. So me trying for a year to save up that money, because my parents were never able to like get enough money for all of us to go back together, Yeah. So I was like, sophomore year in college, I was like, let me go back because I need to see my Lolo. And he passed away, but right before so that was like my first. It's a part of my origin story, right? Like connecting to my ancestral heritage is trying to connect with my ancestors, and they literally passed. That door was closed before I could return. And so just in the depth of grief and loss while trying to like reconnect, it's like traumatic. Yeah.
How'd you get over that?
Well, I mean, I cannot say that you really get over that kind of, because the next time I would go back was 2014, and I was in the Philippines for 2 weeks for a wedding and Holy Week. And in Holy Week, where in the island where my parents are from, there is a ritual of a procession of the 12 Stations of the Cross. We were one of the earliest. I think like the parish started in 1500s. So, one of the earliest converted to Catholicism. So it's a really big deal, like big pilgrimage. Yeah. And so we went back for that. And unfortunately, the world's strongest storm in human history at the time, 2013, was Typhoon Yolanda or Typhoon Haiyan.
And hit that island.
Like, this was like the first superstorm of climate change. Like, I grew up in Florida. So a category 5 hurricane is like devastating. You know, like, I've seen the 3, I've seen the 4. It's like, you know, you don't have school for a few weeks, like power's gone, barbecues, you know, but this was above a category 5.
Wow.
This was like times,
crazy.
You know, over. Like, it was the first, this is what we're going to see, what climate change really looks like, kind of storm. The eye of that storm hit the island where my family is from, and all of my, you know, many generations before me.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a crazy.
So that was I was there 6 months after that storm hit. That was the second time I ever went back to the Philippines.
So it's just like every time there's like a whole event every time you like either try to go back or actually go back.
Yeah, like it was devastating. It's like, and I'm also just starting to go back into that archive and look at those photos again, because you know, after that I was like, I'm not sharing this. This is like trauma porn. This is like people's houses gone, like, you know, seeing an island stripped in dire emergencies. So I can't say that you get over seeing that kind of stuff. And I think even now, having talked to more people about it, really understanding it's a trauma point. First of all, so for everyone. So it was a shared experience. We all saw it from different ways. I did not experience that, but hearing people's stories, like they literally imagine coming out of your house because you think that it's over, but it's really the eye of the storm is passing through, where it's like complete stillness. And then on the other side is the other side of the winds, and the wall just smacks everything out in seconds. It's a little island. Like,
dang. Oh my worship. I can't even imagine that. Damn. But and when was that? 2014, 2015?
It was 2013.
2013.
It was the year that I finished college studying anthropology at Barnard.
Well, but not every time after that you went home was it like a disastrous situation, right?
So the third time I was able to go back, I had an Asian Cultural Council grant.
Right. Was that a few years ago?
In 2017, I received it for 2018, 2019.
Right.
So I was actually able to go back. The first time was 3 months. The second time was 2 weeks. So in 2018, 2019, I was able to go back for 5 months with the Asian Cultural Council grant in fellowship in dance. And kind of this background on experimental Buto, but also...
Can you just explain for people that don't know what Buto is, what it is?
Buto is a form of movement expression that emerged after World War II by two contemporary and also trained in ballet, modern dance dancers from Japan. Because after you've seen the trauma of war and friends and family dying, how do you return and just prance and dance? Like it's
like a mourning dance.
It's a mourning, and it's an exploration of what expression of the human body and its emotions can be. So it really there are two sort of main lineages through it. One is, say, light, one is dark, sort of form and the formlessness. And Buto, as we know it, are these threads from these two lineages of Kazono and Hijikata.
Okay.
Tsumi Hijikata.
So you went, and then you got this grant to go back home. Yeah. And then you were practicing Buto.
As well as I have, studied with Ebony Golden, who has a public performance practice, and that has been something I also have had in the past as a I've done like different street clown things, street performances, kind of impromptu, kind of confrontational. And so I was interested in the Bisayan street dance festivals.
Right.
So that's what I was studying. 5 months of going from like festivals across the islands.
Right.
It was exhausting. I didn't quite, it was incredible because I really got to immerse with the island community in a way that I don't think is really accessible or possible. But I was able to also have to confront, because the thing that I was wanting to study, I came to realize like it didn't really exist beyond this, like, it was like the commercialization of culture for tourism. And that culture really wasn't rooted in proper history. So people were performing these like indigenous tribal dances that don't correspond to any actual, oftentimes not even to historical fact. Like people dancing with pre-colonial dancing with pineapples. Like we didn't have pineapples. The Spanish brought that from Mexico. You know, like kind of all these imagined stories and performed indigeneity. There was this one fashion designer who won like best fashion for Denagyang, who I got to kind of hang out with. And because I was also like wowed by the costume he chose. I was like, bro, this is Black Panthers. And they were like, yeah, I was inspired by Black Panthers and Aztec headdresses and different kinds of indigenous fashion, and created this like fake Ati tribal dance representing these pre-colonial native peoples. Meanwhile, the actual still living Atis often get arrested every year because they're at that festival kind of, I wouldn't say begging, but they're like, hey, you know, we're coming out of town. There are a lot of people in town. Maybe some people can help us. Anyway, they're celebrating us. And it was one of the first years that an Ati tribe had actually participated. But anyway, it was all like blackface. That's just one example of like, wow, one of the biggest ways that we are representing culture is just through this kind of fake commercially sold one. So at the same time, though, I was meeting a lot of different artists and different cultural networks that were beyond what I was thinking had existed. So yeah, it became a return to the Philippines, still confronting different kinds of traumas, whether that was a storm or a death, or just like grieving the loss of our culture and the ways that it's had to be commercialized in order to survive. And, you know, each time was also an opportunity to understand that is part of my healing process that you need to go through in order to reconnect to your ancestral heritage. It's not possible. Like you have to do that work of grieving the loss and letting go of romantic attachments that you have to the idea of what home is. Whether that's like your grandpa that was like trying to meet before he passed, and there you go, too late. So just knowing that that's part of that process of reconnection is going through grieving.
So talk about like that relationship between, you know, grieving the sense of home or trying to process that grief, and how that kind of tied into your work as, you know, teaching your native language as well as the body work that you do.
So the connection between my healing work and Baba Bisaya is part of that process of cultural reconnection, is understanding, as I said, that it's a healing process. And
can you briefly talk about like just like describe your sorry, just describe like the type of body work you do.
Okay. So the body work I practice is a mix of different styles and methods and ways of holding space that I am co-creating with a person, and myself in shared processes of healing.
Mm-hmm. And also, sorry to interrupt you again, but talk about what it means to, like, what you mean by holding space.
By holding space, I mean I'm physically holding someone's body. I'm physically in holding space for their whole body and whatever that holds for them and for, like, as a being in this world. So in bodywork as healing work, it's an honor to create that space where we allow ourselves to just be with our bodies together. And I incorporate practices like...
So is it kind of like being together without judgment? I just want to clarify what holding space means, because I feel like it's a word that people use a lot, and so it kind of loses meaning, and it's hard for people to understand what that means.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that it's a really material connection, the act of body work, because you're physically touching the body. Mm-hmm. You're physically holding them. Mm-hmm. You're physically, it's not an abstract thing. So
it's actually holding.
You're actually holding. There's senses involved. There's a physical being. Mm-hmm. It's not a virtual, metaphysical concept of healing. And so I try to incorporate sensorial methodologies that invite a sense of reconnection to the body through the elements. Mm-hmm. So, and in that exploration of the elements through earth, water, fire, air, and ether, I explore that through different modalities of touch and relation and guided meditation.
Okay. So
it's a somatic experience in that they are invited to explore the elements through Thai yoga, Philippine Hilot, Ayurvedic oil massage, somatic bone spiraling, and Reiki head massage, Degdaga foot massage, and there's also mouth heart, breath work, altar work is invited. Mm. So yeah, it's a shared experience. Mm-hmm. But I am the one physically holding that space, mm-hmm. physically holding their body.
So you're kind of like you're projecting your energy to kind of create this vortex of mm-hmm. this safe space mm-hmm. for holding.
Yeah.
Got you.
And rest space. And something that's come up for me recently is like brave space. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To show up.
Word.
It's all there.
How has going home and kind of reestablishing your relationship with the island that your family came from, how does that influence or inform your work? If it doesn't, that's cool too. But I just wanted to invite the connection if there is one.
It definitely informs my work. I really see my work as trans-oceanic, diasporic, by necessity. As a form
by necessity?
As a form of organizing. Mm-hmm. There is a radical lack of connection across the globe, even despite the fact that we have the internet. There are just in-person relationships that need to be formed and forged. And when I say in person, I mean also in touch, in physical touch, that need to be informed at that level, right? In order for us to actually work together. Because the disconnection is a physical thing, and it's a disconnection at the level of environment. Even in the island where my family is from, there are levels of how people are disconnected to the environment. Whether through trauma, like experiencing, the world's strongest human storm, human storm.
Right.
So, there's different levels in which we're disconnected. One of those ways, though, systematically for Filipinos, for islanders who are living abroad, is that we are disconnected from our native language, especially if we did not grow up listening to it. Mm-hmm. And that closes off an entire portal of access to worlds, to communities, to people who are also trying to claim autonomy over their land and their expression.
Yeah.
And so it's really vital that there are portals and spaces in which people are able to reconnect to their language, and it being a transoceanic dialogue that we build and co-create together, because it literally doesn't exist, despite the fact that there are more Bisayan speakers than there are Tagalog speakers. And
which is another language that they speak in the
Tagalog is a national language of the Philippines. So Filipino is based off Tagalog, and everyone and all of the school systems across the islands have to learn Tagalog. We don't have like Bisayan classes. Like it would be something, one class you have in college or like a course, but it's very hyper specific. Like people don't have access to their own native language, and even people don't have access to their own native language there, let alone here in diaspora.
Yeah, so it's like you're saying, the disconnection is, everywhere around the world and in the home space and in the homeland.
So
wow.
So yeah, we need to build that sense of connection with each other, through the land, through our connections to land, seas.
And so you have a program that you kind of run or something or organize, but you were kind of like one of the, what do you call that?
Stewards.
Yes, one of the stewards.
Captains.
Word. One of the stewards, one of the captains.
Yeah.
So talk about like how that functions, because it's something that you teach here in the States, right?
So it started last year. It was our first iteration. This year, so what I started was Baba Bisaya. So it's a language, it's a cultural language immersion that has 3 language classes in the 3 major Bisayan languages, which are Hiligaynon, Cebuanon, which is Cebuano, or Waray. And those are the 3 main languages spoken across a archipelago of the Central Islands of the Philippines. So there are more Bisayan language speakers than there are Tagalog language speakers, for example. And that's just within the Philippines. Then you have the larger global diaspora, because there are more Filipinos abroad than there are that live there. Although it's catching up, like you can't really say anymore because there's just so many. Like where the biggest export of the Philippines is migrants. So, for example, in the U.S., it being nurses, also healers. Oh yeah, so I wanted to say that with the Bambasay language course, our teachers are based in the Philippines, and then our students are anyone who lives abroad and has some sort of connection to the Bisayan languages, to the Bisayan island communities. And it was really amazing because most of the people who signed up were artists, were organizers, were people who are like long-term invested in their journey to like reconnect to homelands.
So your students aren't just people based in the States, they're based everywhere. They're anywhere that's outside of the Philippines.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I believe we only had American. No, well, Amy is sort of it's international Filipinos, or not Filipinos, but is connected to like international Filipinos. So, our students were and are from anywhere, and this year we really want to make it a collaborative. I mean, this is the vision. What you're saying is right. Like, I'm a captain. I'm a steward. I don't want to be on this ship forever. What I'm trying to create is,
We're just kind of like manifesting it out into the world, and then how it grows, it can be outside of you.
Yeah, because I want. It's something that we all have to be invested in, right? It doesn't exist.
Yes.
And so if we want to connect to our native language and we want to preserve it, we have to co-create it together.
And that's why I like that you use the word steward, because I feel like steward is something that's like, a steward is someone who like by nature is like temporary. Like it's not like a permanent kind of like entrenched kind of figure or position. So I like the way you put it, that it was like you're a steward, because it is everyone's responsibility. And I feel like, if we're talking about like indigenous ways of thinking, I feel like the having like a figurehead is something that might not be most natural to our practices and how we like to organize. Like, it is someone who is like, whoever has, the resources or the access or the energy or the capacity to do it, will then do it. It's not like, oh, because I have the resources and energy and capacity that I'm like the king, like it's not like a monarchy. So I like the way you framed it.
Yeah. And that's that to do that though, it takes a lot of organizing work. It takes building a network across oceans.
Mm-hmm.
And that has also evolved through my healing work.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about, because that's my next question. Talk about the healing gift that runs in the family, so to speak. Because I remember when we were kind of talking last week or something, you had talked about this this passing down of some type of healing gift, and it was just like, it's such a otherworldly and fascinating experience, or a fascinating telling of it, that I feel like it's an incredible part of your story that I feel like people want to hear. So yeah, talk about that.
I had learned recently, like during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
I had always known that my grandma was a healer of some sort, my Lola, on my mother's side. But I didn't quite understand how the whole thing worked. And, like I had gone to the market and so I had asked if anyone knew healers on the island. And they're like, oh, your grandma. I was like, oh, right. And my mother had explained to me that my Lola, her mother, had a gift, a mantra that was passed to her as the eldest daughter of the eldest daughter, that is passed when a person is about to die, and then they pass it to their eldest daughter. And that person holds that mantra and uses that mantra chewing guava leaf, and then uses that mantra, chews the guava leaf, says the mantra, and then spits it on the child. These stories of my grandmother as a mananambal, a healer, using this mantra that was passed to her, a secret oracion is what they call it, an oracion that was in Latin, apparently.
So oracion means mantra?
Yes, okay. It's something that is repeated, but no one knows it. And that is also the power of it, is that it's secret and it's only passed down through the eldest matriarch lineage. My mother is the youngest daughter. I am the youngest daughter of my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So when my Lola died, my mother was 19 years old. Remember, she's the youngest daughter of 8 children, 7 girls.
So they had a lot to pick from.
Yeah. So, but the eldest one received it when my Lola died,
mm-hmm.
and she never used it. And then her eldest daughter became sick and is unmarried and doesn't have a child. And so there's no way for this mantra to be passed down and this healing lineage. So I had already had a healing practice, body work, holding ritual space, ceremony, before I really learned all of this. And so
the ancestors were like, this is the one.
Well, it seems to be that way. Like when people started, because I kind of, when I was there during the pandemic is when these stories started kind of coming to understanding.
So that's when you learned?
That's when I kind of understood more how this healing practice was transferred.
Okay.
And that was when I was living in the ancestral house that they had built, my Lola, and where my Lola had a garden. This is where she, this is where she had planted the guava trees. This is where she did her healing practice. And I came to understand that matrilineal lineage of the oración in this Mananambal tradition, in which
and what is Sara
because there are many ways that a healer
what is Sara? Can you say the
Mananambal?
Yeah,
a Mananambal is a healer.
Okay, got you.
Tambal means medicine.
Okay.
So Mananambal is someone who practices medicine, and that
how
can be.
You say it? Do you mind if I ask again how you say it?
Mananambal.
Mananambal.
Ma na nam bal.
Mananambal.
Yeah.
Hey. Is that a Bisayan word?
Yeah, that is.
Hey. Teach us too.
I've heard other people refer to her as a medico as well, like a ritualist, someone who holds ritual space.
Wow.
And so I was learning all of this while I was also planting seeds and building a garden. And no one had really tended to that land in the same way since she had passed. And I had been kind of keeping my practice quiet. Like there was this one time where it was like 10 p.m. on a full moon and I was outside picking flowers from the tree and my neighbor saw me. And
you were like, oh shit.
And they're like, Nosaka, like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm getting flowers for the Virgin Mother. Like, nakuha lang ko mga buwag para sa...
What does that mean?
Like, I'm just getting some flowers for, oh my God.
You said it already.
Yeah,
sorry.
Okay. So yeah, for the Virgin Mother. And they're like, oh, of course. Yeah, for the Virgin Mother, getting some flowers for the Virgin Mother.
Yeah.
Like,
as long as it's for like Catholicism.
It's like, I'm just adorning my altar with flowers and worshiping the divine oneness of source and all of life that is giving.
So that's your cover. Christianity is the cover.
Yeah. And I told you my grandma, my Lola was at church 5:30 every morning.
She was an avid Christian.
She was an avid Catholic Christian and doing sacred Latin mantras that was passed to her from generation to generation,
And that's why I really fucked with what you said last night, because I was then asking you like, oh, so then are you a Christian, Khokhoi? And then you were saying that like essentially Christianity is just like the Trojan horse, in the same way that a lot of people from the islands and from the Caribbean used Christianity when they were enslaved, and they came up with the orishas and et cetera, and then they were like mapping each of their figureheads to like Saint Jude or whoever the fuck. And so I like this practice of like hiding the real kind of like magic or the real ritual in the Trojan horse of Christianity, and like
100%. Yes. Yeah, 100%. I mean, there are parts of it again that are extremely traumatic. The whole like brainwashing of it and all, and some of it, like my friend told me about this weird ritual that they do at this Christian, this Catholic college. I'm like, y'all were on some
what is this,
like Saint Thomasian, I don't know, like ascetic weird like cult things. Anyway, I'm like, so there's some parts of like the Christianity that obviously we do not appreciate in our story. At the same time, we do not endorse
or
tolerate. At the same time, there are ways that our ancestors had to adapt and hide the magic.
Exactly.
And do I believe that before the Spanish arrived, that we had a oración that was in another language besides Latin, that was perhaps in Sanskrit? Because that was one of the things the Spanish was most scared of, was that in the night, the native peoples of the Philippines would hold these circles around a fire where the shamans babaylans would go into these chants in tongues that were undescribable, unintelligible, But it's like, bro, they were chanting mantras. Like, they were...
Just mind yours.
Just like, mind your business. It's an ancient language that is repeated to hold
don't worry,
ritual
we're
space.
not cursing you.
Yeah. It's like, no, they were heathen primitives. Like, yeah, we had to adapt. We had to find ways to keep our magic.
And that was one of the ways. Okay, so your grandmother has this gift. Her eldest daughter didn't use it. And then the daughter of the eldest daughter got sick and couldn't practice. And then you're already basically practicing a certain type of ritual on your own. And then...
And I'm the youngest daughter of the youngest daughter.
And you're the exact opposite of what the tradition is supposed to be. And then you told me about your grandmother coming to you. Was it in a dream?
She came in a... You've ever had sleep paralysis?
I haven't, no. But I've just heard about it from like friends.
So sleep paralysis is when you're so extremely tired that you have these hallucinations, but it feels so real, in which you're in the bed and you can't move your body, but you're awake and you're aware that you're asleep in a body that you can't move. But I had this during lockdown 2020 in an afternoon nap. This is on a...
It's always the naps that get you.
It's like a 2 p.m. nap. Like, I already been sleeping all morning long because I got nothing to do because it's the middle of lockdown. The world is over.
Right.
And I'm in my family's ancestral house and the sun...
Where your cousin was.
Where my cousin was also there. Downstairs. Like the sun blasts you at 6 a.m.
Yeah, so you're in this nap.
I was in this nap and my grandma comes in the room. I mean,
Who passed away?
My Lola, who is, I've never met, comes into the room while I'm like awake in the bed. I'm like, oh, hey, La, like, what are you doing here? And I'm in the bed. I'm laying in the bed. I'm seeing my body asleep. And then my Lola puts her hands over me like Reiki. I know this because I do this with my bodywork clients. Just puts her hands over me like, La, what are you doing? And she's like, she doesn't say anything. And she just starts beaming white light into me, like shooting white light, like.
How did it feel?
It was overwhelming. I was like, La, what are you doing? La, what are you doing? What is that?
So it wasn't necessarily that it felt like burning or stinging or very cool. It just felt like overwhelming energy.
Yeah, it was just like getting shot with light inside you while you're in sleep paralysis. It's like you feel so it's like
powerless.
It's powerless, but you can feel everything. It's like, imagine getting like surgery, but you're not on any medicines. And so you feel everything, but you can't move and you have no capacity to change it. I just kept screaming like internally, like, I gotta stop. I gotta get out of it. And
as in get out of the dream.
I had to get out of that
situation.
I had to get out of the situation. And I was like, stop. And I flung myself out of it. And then, woke up in the room, just like in the bed, like sweat all over, pink walls, bright 2 p.m. sun in the tropics. And she was gone. And, I told you this, that I feel like I just got too scared.
You should have kept going.
I should have kept going. And I probably...
So can you explain what you feel like she was doing to you?
I mean, I think it's pretty... I felt pretty clear that she was transferring energy to me and transferring some ancestral energy. I had already seen a healer, or like I had Skyped a healer, Flo, who was up in the Bronx, Flo Glow. Love her, bless. Yeah.
Felice?
Yes, Felice, yes. Yeah. She had told me, because I was like, why is it that when I'm finally ready to like find a healer to study with and learn from here in Bantayan, there's a fucking global pandemic. Like, I just want to meet with a teacher. Like, why does it feel so hard to meet with a teacher that I can study with? Because I've had many teachers, but there's been a lot of off vibes for me as well.
And so what was her response? Or what,
right, like, yeah, because I'm just looking to be an apprentice. Yeah. And her response to me was like, your ancestors don't want you to study with anyone else right now. They have seen you in the past, and they know that there's a tendency where when you study with someone, they kind of absorb your energy. And they want you to tap into your own energy. They don't need anyone to be parasiting off of you. Wow. So,
like them trying to protect you.
Yeah, they're trying to protect me. So they want me to just really go deep into my power.
That's right. Go inward.
And they don't want you to apprentice with anyone else. So that's why those obstacles keep showing up. So, I had to sit with that. But part of what was also just like kind of unraveled, it was when people started to notice that, like, this was my practice, that I would make oils with flowers and collect herbs and leaves. They're like, oh, you're a manambal, you're a healer, and your Lola was a manambal, so she just transferred it to you. And I was like, huh? Me? Like, yeah, like she just transferred it because it has to get transferred. And they were like, when you're ready to step into being like a healer, like, people are going to start lining up for you. This is on the island. People were telling me this. They're like, you're going to be known as this Phil-Am healer. People are going to, like, Filipino American. People are going to want to be like, oh, people who don't even believe in that kind of stuff anymore will want to go to you because they're like, oh, you're the one who came back and then, like, had this healing power, brought back from the ancestors, from her Lola. And I was like, me?
That's right, no, you, Khokhoi.
I'm not ready to step into what? So don't tell anyone.
You just wear a veil everywhere,
but it's like
to obscure your identity.
Right. Like, you can't hide from that ancestral lineage forever. That is my story. That is part of, like, my evolution, going back to my islands and reconnecting. And I do plan on living there and building a home there and sanctuary there. So I have to step in. Yeah, I have to step into what that means. And I'm like, when I'm making labels for my herbal medicines that I'm trying to sell on Turtle Island, I'm like, Lola never had to do any of this shit. Like, she never had to market her healing practice in global market capitalism, in the center of global market capitalism, right. Turtle Island and Lenape in New York City. Right. She never had to do that shit. And here I am, having studied anthropology and media studies, and, like, trying to create this these platforms for learning language, culture, arts, and media, and giving body work, and creating these healing spaces for connection. Like, my practice looks very different than my Lola,
and I feel like that's right. It's going to, and hers probably look different than the ones that came before her. But here's the question that I have, and then we'll go ahead and close and conclude the interview. What advice or encouragement can you give to someone who kind of was in your position, which is they are maybe blessed with a gift that can feel overwhelming the way you felt in your dream, or really scary, or it's something that feels like too big for them, and if they feel like they're too small to embrace it, or they feel like they're not enough, or that they aren't prepared, or whatever, like, what advice do you have to someone who might have a calling like that?
Like I said from the beginning, this process of connecting to your ancestral heritage will always require grieving and healing. It's inevitable. We have to go through the feels. And that's part of our journey that we have to accept, is if we choose to accept that journey, because that's going to be part of the ride. And so really leaning into your relationships, your
relationships with who?
With the environment, with the land that you're on or that your ancestors lived on, with people that you call community, with people that you call family, people you call friends. Know that you are not alone. We are literally, it is your story of healing, and it is our collective story of healing all of the relationships of disconnection that were ruptured through colonialism, through capitalism. And we're rewriting these narratives across the globe. So
you got to write your chapter.
Write your chapter.
You can't shy away from the calling. You have to write your chapter.
I mean, and I'm in it too. I'm scared. I don't know, but I just know that this is part of the process that we all are going through together. So let's lean in. Let's build with trust, with safety, with shared values that are connected to our material bodies, to the land, to our roots, to the seeds, to the soil, to the seas, like the real, like the material, sensorially real. And let's keep that going. It's a process that we're all doing together, and that should make you more curious than afraid.
Okay. I love